Hello everybody and welcome back to the Garibaldi Red podcast, a Nottingham Forest podcast. Nice to be back after a few days and of course the international break, which apart from Morgan making his England cameo, it's all a bit boring, isn't it, not watching Forest. But we are back and we're back with a bang, aren't we? And a big game away at Anfield as Forest look to continue their unbeaten start in the Premier League. They travel to Anfield tomorrow as we record this on a Friday, 3:00 kickoff. I'm delighted to be going, actually. I'm really looking forward to tomorrow. Really looking forward to be in that away end. And someone that is over the pond for us to discuss lots about Forest and during international break and what he thinks and whether he's going to shed optimism that Forest are going to go to Anfield and win is the one and only Mark Turner. Mark, good to see you again, mate. Feeling a little worse for wear, are you, this morning?
We just got done saying we were going to talk about that. Yeah, keep your voice down. That's all I'll ask. Keep your voice down. Yeah, I'm properly in the away end over here, aren't I? I'm all the way over in America, 5,000 miles away. Yeah, good to see you, mate. Thanks again for having me on the show. I appreciate it. I'm already going to be a little contrary, though. I actually enjoyed the international break. I'm not enjoying how frequently they seem to be coming around now because of the new competition format and whatnot, but this was a good one. Obviously, mentioned Morgan getting a run out. It was good to see England get 2 wins. It was interesting to see Lee Carsley at the helm, but of course, the highlight of the entire international break was San Marino finally securing their first ever competitive victory. I don't know if anyone saw the footage of that, saw the goal, which was as terrible as you'd imagine it to be, but then the subsequent celebration, which was absolutely joyous. If you've not seen it, get on the YouTubes, check it out. It'll brighten your day.
Do you know what? San Marino fans must feel like Derby fans at time and vice versa. When Derby finally play Forest again and beat them, that's how it'll be. Like it was with San Marino. I agree, Mark. It was nice to see that. And an interesting one actually about Carsley. Obviously, we are a Forest podcast, but there's been lots of talk, isn't there? And I've done a bit of stuff on it, and I think some of the criticism already. Well, how can you judge him on only these games or these easy games? Well, he's got off to a good start. I think we've played better football. Yes, they're against 2 worse teams than what we've probably came up against in the Euros and major competitions. However, I thought he's done a good start. So. I actually think we should give it Carsley. I would have given it Steve Cooper, but he wasn't available. So there you go. Right. Anyway, let's quickly touch actually just before we get on to the game and who we fear, everybody and everything like that. Let's talk a little bit about Morgan. I kind of did. I've done a few podcasts since he had his first appearance for England, but just such a big moment, isn't it, for the club, Mark? First player to do it since 1997. Stuart Pearce. We keep banging on about it, but I thought when he came on, there was that brilliant video actually, and ITV put kind of a nice clip on social media of it with that brilliant kind of pass. And I just thought he looked like he fitted in right. He didn't look like a player that was making his debut. He didn't look nervous, and hopefully we see more of him in an England shirt.
Yeah, regardless what your opinion is on Carsley and whether you think Carsley's going to get the job, ultimately, him being at the helm when Morgan had his debut, and of course the two things are inextricably interlinked, I think really helped Morgan. And yeah, I think you're right. You went out there and played like the Morgan we see at the City Ground. Lots of flair, fearless, the occasional fantastic pass for the outside of the foot. I think he did well. My concern is the talent in that part of the field right now. I think it might be the best we've ever had in my lifetime. And, I lived through Gerrard, Scholes and Lampard. But if you look at the depth in those positions, particularly now as evidently Jack Grealish is a number 10, it makes it that much more challenging. So hopefully we see Morgan in an England shirt a little more. He gets a few more caps. But yeah, I think he acquitted himself very well on his debut.
Yeah, good stuff. Right, let's move on to Liverpool. Another big Forest faithful will be going away tomorrow. Just, I suppose we do talk about it a lot, and maybe the novelty kind of wears off after a few seasons in the Premier League, but certainly for me, as someone that's followed the club since as long as I can remember, since 8 years old, and seen the club play Black, I can remember going to Wigan away on a Tuesday night in the FA Cup, and then Wigan away in the league on Saturday, and Forest lost both of those games. So for us to be playing Liverpool away from home, it's a great thing for the club, and it does have that special feeling about it, playing a big team like that. I mean, how can you see the game going, Mark? It isn't easy. We'll touch on the quality that they've got, but Forest have got something about them at the minute. We're under Nuno, we're confident, we're feeling good, we're unbeaten. They've got some big games coming up, including Champions League action. So they've got to probably make a few changes in terms of, where Arne Slot's focus is on. But in terms of Forest, we can maybe go out and cause an upset, or is that me being very, very optimistic?
Well, first off, have you been to Anfield before?
Yeah, I've been once before, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I think I'm well on record of saying I do not care for Liverpool. They're right up there with Derby for me. But there's no getting away from the fact that, Anfield,
I guess that's the difference in age brackets, Mark, maybe, for me, because I didn't really see that Liverpool rival. A lot of people talk about it to me, but I didn't really see it back in the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so they were just very arrogant back in the day, and so to knock them off their perch was fantastic, and we did it frequently as I was coming up. But there's no getting away from the fact that Anfield is a very special place, particularly when it's energized, which hopefully it won't be this weekend. Hopefully it'll be flat, and that'll be because Forest rock up and do the business. And I don't think your optimism is misplaced, Max. I think everything you said holds water, and I think there's the potential for Forest to deliver a shock. I just don't see it happening. I think the likelihood is, you mentioned that we're unbeaten so far. We are, of course, as are Liverpool. Not only are they unbeaten, but it's nothing but W's down the path so far. I think they haven't conceded a goal yet, right? So
yeah, they haven't.
They're looking very robust at the back. They're looking very threatening up top. And I think the thing that concerns me most about Liverpool, and we have this to some degree, but it's not to the same level, is that they have a wide variety of ways to score. And so, who do you defend? Who's the focus point? Like, where do you kind of put your time? If you're doubling up on somebody, who do you pick? It's very challenging, and they just have incredible quality throughout. So, is there a possibility for a Forest upset? Absolutely. Do I personally think it's going to happen? Unfortunately, I don't.
That's where we disagree. I've got a feeling. I've honestly got a feeling. Right, let's
break into song now.
Yeah.
Well, we're due to win. I mean, I'm looking at the results since we got back into the Premier League. We've had a couple of obviously very close games. I mean, they're winning 1-goal games down the line, with the exception of the 3-0 aberration, of course.
With Matt Turney, I can remember that.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. And he said, Matt, listeners and viewers, not Mark. I just balls it up every podcast. But yeah, that was a match where Turner didn't cover himself in glory, that's for sure. But every other game has been a 1-goal game. I could see something similar this weekend. And to your point, I think Forest have that potential to have that 1-goal swing go in their favour. I just think the likelihood is it goes the other way, especially at Anfield.
Yeah, we shall see. Right, earlier this week, I caught up with Steve from the RedMenTV, who gave us an opposition view and what life is like under Arne Slot. Steve from the RedMenTV, good to see you as always, mate. Another big game in the Premier League this weekend. Forest travel to Anfield. I mean, from a Forest fan's point of view, always nice to make those trips compared to like the Blackburns and Blackpools we used to do a few seasons ago. I mean, just first of all, kind of how do you assess the season so far for Liverpool? Obviously early days, and also the summer as a whole, because it must be, a bit of an odd feeling around the club when probably one of your best ever managers in Jurgen Klopp leaves, and then you get a new man under Arne Slot. But things seem to be going quite well so far.
Absolutely, yeah. Like you say, so far so good. It was an interesting summer in that, but it was one that we were prepared for, because obviously Jurgen made his announcement so far in advance. Like, it wasn't like a huge shock. We all knew it was coming. So after he got his send-off, obviously Liverpool didn't end the season quite where they wanted to. We had a very good season, but it looked like it was going to be a great season, and it ends up being a very good season. So there was a little bit of, obviously, a bit of downheart and a bit downbeat, or however you want to say it. Obviously, Arne Slot, we didn't know too much about him. He was announced as the man the day after Jurgen left, really. So again, there was no real drama, no great surprise, no managerial hunt to speak of. We knew from day one who the new man was going to be. And as for his start, mate, it's been, I mean, pretty much perfect, really. Liverpool, I was there in America on the pre-season tour. I went to all the games. Liverpool, with a lot of players out for obvious reasons, Euros and Copa America, they won every game in pre-season. And then they've started the Premier League season 3 from 3, haven't conceded a goal. So we couldn't have asked for much more, really. You know, for a new manager to come in. He has changed quite. I mean, the players haven't changed, but he's changed. I know he said he hasn't changed too much, but I think he has. It looks like there's a complete different way Liverpool play. But you know, with all due respect, we would expect to be Ipswich away, and we'd expect to be Brentford at home. I think they you know, it doesn't matter who the manager is. Really, we would expect to win those games. But to go to Old Trafford and win 3-0, you know, a game that Liverpool have actually struggled in. We've beat Man United a couple of times at Old Trafford under Jurgen. Most of the time when we've beaten them and we've battered them, it's been Anfield. So for a manager, you know, to go to Old Trafford in his 3rd game in charge of the football club and win 3-0 and dominate them, really, that game was over in an hour. It was a training session from that point onwards. It was really, really impressive. So absolutely, mate, like I say, we couldn't really have asked for more. If you'd have said, you know, 9 points, no goals conceded, with pretty much the same team. It has been the same team, no new signings, really. There's been one, and he hasn't played yet. Then, yeah, mate, I don't really think we could have asked for more, to be honest, Max.
Yeah, just suppose a dream start, really. And in terms of kind of expectations for this season, where would you, as a Liverpool fan, realistically be hoping that the club would finish?
Yeah, it's such a tough question. It's a good question. Top 4 has to be the minimum. Like that has to be the minimum, really. Anything other than that for Liverpool is a failure. I think it would be really hard to say to a new man, come in your first year, and by the way, go and topple Pep Guardiola, go and, you know, Mikel Arteta, who's been building something 3 or 4 years. You have to go and beat them. I think that would be unrealistic. What I wanted, and I think a lot of Liverpool fans expected, would be to show us what you were about. Do you have a plan? Can we see a way that where you're trying to get to? Maybe it takes a year or 2. You probably don't get much longer than that, really, to be competing. But can you lay those foundations down? Can we see what you're about? And then, you know, domestic cups, it depends on the draws, I suppose. But I don't think anyone was going, Liverpool have to win the title, or was expecting Arne Slot to come in and go, you have to go and win the title. I think if Jurgen would have still been in charge, given on the back of what happened last year and how close Liverpool got, you know, Liverpool were top of the league in and around March, April time, having already won a trophy. They were in, you know, the quarterfinals of a Europa League, quarterfinals of an FA Cup, whatever. So given the way that season had gone to that point, I think if Jurgen was still in charge, we probably would have said the expectation is to go better. I think that would be really unfair on Arne Slot to ask that of him. But I must admit, Max, the way he started, he's even more expectations on himself, because it's been such a good start that, you know, and you're looking at Arsenal and they dropped a bit of points and they've got injuries and, you know, they've got big games coming, and you look at Manchester City and you're thinking, oh, this here and starts on Monday, and all of a sudden you start going crazy and you have to calm yourself down. It's just been 3 games. But I think the expectation of the people who own the football club would have been, you have to get us. Liverpool can't be playing Europa League football again. Like, Liverpool have to be a consistent Champions League team. I think that's the bare minimum that's expected of any Liverpool manager, really.
Yeah, totally. And I was about to say, I think Forest fans are looking forward to maybe the Manchester City hearing with everything that happened with Peter Sarr. And to be honest, mate, it might be nice to see somebody else win the league as well. Right, on to the game, really, at the weekend. And almost wonder, actually, just from a neutral's point of view as well, Steve, what you made to Forest last season, and obviously a change of manager halfway through, everything with a points deduction, but ultimately staying up, which was the goal. Maybe Forest are on their way to becoming an established Premier League side.
Yeah, I always think sometimes with Forest, and it's a bit. I used to think this a little bit with Chelsea sometimes back in the day, albeit at different scales. It was like it always looks quite chaotic, and it doesn't quite make sense. But quite often the ends justify the means. Like the fact, you know, not Norwich, for example. They've tried to do, you know, what you'd say, sustainable way, and I get it, and I think that's quite admirable. And then they keep getting relegated. Whereas Nottingham Forest do some things, and you're like, really, that many players, that him, but it's tended to work. Even, like I say, points deductions and whatever. The idea is to make, you know, you've got to establish yourself in the Premier League for a couple of seasons before you can even think of how, you know, you've got to get yourself 2 or 3 at least seasons and go, right, we can build from here. Look what. Brighton did, or maybe Brentford are trying to do now, where you get yourself in for a few years and then you can look up. I think for a few years you've got to just make sure you stay in the division. So on that front, the decisions have worked because I'm sitting here talking to you. So obviously there's a Premier League game at this weekend. I like Steve Cooper. I thought he was a good coach, but you could tell there was clashes there with the owner. It never felt right. I also think Nuno's a good coach. I've always thought Nuno was a good coach. I don't think I would be best at all that times if I was paying to watch that football all the time. And I think you might disagree with that, but like at some point it probably does have to develop a little bit, and it probably has to do. But as a man who can keep it in the division for a bit, stabilise the football club, I think he's a good appointment. And then Forest have got some good players. You got some good attacking players, and that's what I always thought when we play games against Forest, is that I'd expect us to win, but if you're at your best, they do have players who can hurt you. And there's been some very tight games between these two clubs in recent years, obviously, more so away from home for us rather than at Anfield, but still, they've been competitive games. So, yeah, listen, if you ask me what my expectations are, I'd expect that Forest will be somewhere between 15th and 15th downwards. And my guess is I think they're probably good enough to stay up again.
Yeah,
and then next year's probably the season where you go, right, we've done that a couple of years now. We can't be doing this every year. I really worry for the promoted teams, if I'm honest. All three of them, and I think that I thought that last year, and I was half proved right. Really, I just didn't ever think Luton and Sheffield United were going to have enough. I don't think Southampton are going to have enough. And I don't think Ipswich are going to have enough. We'll see what else happens elsewhere. Leicester maybe. But even then, I don't know. So I think that my expectation would be Forest stay up. But listen, I would expect you to be down there, Max. I don't know if you guys disagree.
Yeah, I think I think safety is obviously the main priority. I think a lot of Forest fans think that it might be more of a kind of a mid-table finish, and I do think we'll be a bit of an underdog this year. I think we'll surprise a few, and as you mentioned, we've got some good personnel. I mean, Morgan Gibbs-White getting his first England cap the other day was quite a big moment for Forest, first player to do it since 1997. Just on the game then, Steve, kind of turning our attention to that. I mean, how do you see this going? I guess being at home at Anfield, confidence flying under Arne Slot, you can't see anything more than 3 points. And for Forest fans, realistically speaking, we go away for maybe to enjoy the trip more than to try and get anything. And if Forest did get anything, then it really would be probably the result of the season, and certainly maybe even the result of Nuno's managerial time at Forest so far.
Yeah, I always think I always try and flip it a little bit and think, if I was an opposition team going to Anfield, when would I like to go? I don't think the back of an international break on a game when Liverpool play Champions League on Tuesday in Milan would be the worst. Would be the worst time. I think that's probably a good time from a Forest perspective. Arne Slot so far, this season, has picked 10 players the same in all the games. He made one change at half time against Ipswich. He took Quansah off and brought Canate on, and then that team has played the next two games. So there's been no need for rotation. Not touch wood, not in terms of the first 11 getting injured, things like that. But now it's probably the first time we're going to see a little bit of rotation. He's going to have to, I would guess, somewhere along the line. Liverpool now play every midweek up until the next international break. So, for example, I'll run through it very quickly. They play Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, Wednesday. So it's going to have to. It can't be the same 11 all the time. We've had players like Luis Diaz, Alexis McAllister. I know you guys are similar, but they've been away in South America playing games, qualifiers there. We've had. The team hasn't been together for a long time. That's what happens when you're Liverpool. Your players play international footy. Even the bench. You're thinking, well, he's had a rest. No. Kostas Tsimikas doesn't really play for us. He's been playing for Greece. Keith Kelleher has been playing for Ireland, and the list goes on. And things like that. Even young Tyler Morton was playing for the England under 21s. There's been a lot of players away. So I think if I was a Forest fan, that might give me a little bit of hope. But you are right. My expectation is that Liverpool, playing anybody at home, really, there are very few games where I wouldn't expect us to be favourites, and rightly so. Going back to the previous games against Forest, I think what Forest have tried to do is make it quite chaotic, if that makes sense. And sometimes Liverpool, under Jurgen Klopp, we could get dragged into those type of games. It was kind of how we were set up as well. We wanted to go blow for blow. We'll attack you. There'll be spaces in behind, but we trust our defenders to get it right, and we'll hit you on the counter. And it's just about worked. Against Forest, it hasn't always been easy. I remember some in particular, late winners, or remember that mad game when you just kept doing the long throw in and kept scoring against us. There's been things like that where it's been a bit chaotic. the football under Arne Slot has been a bit more measured and a bit more controlled. And I think that against the teams who, again, at home, maybe mid-table or below, you'd expect to beat, that should work in your favour. But it is the first time, like I say, there's been 3 games. It would have been 1 game a week, a full week of training, no injuries, no rest, no bother like that. You know, we've had players on every continent, you know, Europe, South America, Africa, they've been everywhere kind of stuff. It'll be interesting to see how he picks his team and how if he's got, you know, I'm trying to think, does he have half an eye on Milan on Tuesday? Is he not bothered about that? Will he cross that bridge when he gets to it? That's the interesting thing. So I'm not, if you'd have asked me last week, I'd have knew what Liverpool's team was and I'd have been able to tell you what it's going to be.
Yeah.
I'd be shocked now if there aren't a couple of changes at least. And the good news is, though, Max, our bench is pretty strong as well from our point of view. So there's not too,
everywhere's strong.
You're not weakening the team too much. You know what I mean? You know, if it's not Salah, Jota, and Diaz, you've got Nunes, Gakpo, and Chiesa. So they're not bad subs to bring in.
Yeah, not bad at all. Especially when I've got a few of them in my fantasy team as well. Just hope they don't score. I think I've got from Liverpool. I think I've got Nunez and Salah. So there you go. So
Nunez is a tough one. Salah's a banker.
Yeah, exactly.
Salah and Trent, get them in your team if you can.
Yeah. I'd rather have Nico Williams, actually. And Morgan. Right, that does us nicely. Steve, thanks so much for your time, mate. Enjoy the game at the weekend. I am sure we will speak very soon for the reverse fixture. And appreciate your time, mate. That was Steve there talking about Liverpool's start to the season. And it's quite interesting, actually, Mark, when I was talking to him and he touched on Forest and kind of them being in the Premier League now for a few years and working towards being an established Premier League side. And it's nice to see kind of this fixture, given the history back in the day in the Premier League. In terms of Forest tactically, Mark, and going into the game, do you expect Nuno to make changes? And also you look at a player like James Ward-Prowse. I mean, I would be tempted, very, very tempted to start him going away to Anfield, would you?
Where would you start him? Who would you start him ahead of?
Well, that's the issue, isn't it?
Morgan White starting, Elliot Anderson starting. You know, you're not going to play Ward-Prowse in one of the wide positions, especially over the 4 players that we have vying for those spots right now. I mean, there's no doubting his quality. He's a fantastic player. I'm delighted to see him in the Garibaldi. I just don't know who you drop right now. I think Elliot Anderson was Player of the Month, right, for Forest this last month.
Yep.
And MG Dub obviously is going to be high on life right now. You're not going to play James Ward-Prowse in the 6, I don't think. I'm not saying he couldn't play there, but there are better options for that. I mean, there just are, like Sangare, Dominguez, Yates. There's any number of players who are going to give you that bite back there. You're going to need, and to be honest, and it'd be interesting to see what Nuno does, Max. I think he might be inclined to have Elliot Anderson even play a little deeper alongside someone like a Sangare to give you kind of that double pivot. I hate to see that because I want to see us be expansive. I want to see us go for the throat. But, you know, needs must and all that. And we are on the road at a team that's, again, got nothing but victories all year long, having conceded the goal and are formidable. So I love James Ward-Prowse. The sooner we see him play for Forest, the happier I'll be. I just don't know that it's this weekend. And in terms of how Forest get it done, Max, I think my areas of biggest concern, well, again, I'll come back to what I said earlier, which is like when you're playing a team where there's a focal point and you can, you know, shift to one side of the field, or you can double up on a player to nullify that threat, or maybe, you know, the couple of threats that they have, the whole thing becomes much more manageable. With Liverpool, where do you start? I mean, there's so much quality across the board, same as, you know, when you play an Arsenal or when you play a Man City. So I have concerns about that and about Forest being overwhelmed, particularly if Liverpool start well. My other concern, Max, is our pressing game. I think Callum Hudson-Odoi and Alanga are not particularly good at pressing. They have tons of energy. I just tactically, I don't think they're always tuned in. And sometimes I see us being lopsided because they're not going with the group. And then I think Chris Wood just can't do it. Like, that's not one of his strong attributes. So now you've got a forward line of 3 players who there's not really any joined up thinking in terms of how they're pressing. What I think has the potential to be a vulnerable Liverpool defence. I think you can get at them. I just don't know that our forward line will very effectively. So then you're in a situation where you're giving them a lot of the ball You're allowing them to dictate the pace of the game and play out the back. I know I'm sounding like a right flipping misery gets out here, aren't I? But again, I can't see anything other than a Liverpool victory. I don't think it will be a landslide. Again, it could be a 1-goal game, but those are the things that would concern me.
Don't drink, kids. Don't drink. But, you know,
don't drink the pod.
Drink responsibly.
Absolutely.
In terms of the game, Mark, I actually think the game might be won in midfield, which is a bit of an odd thing to say against a team like Liverpool and often against in the top 6. However, I think, again, Forest in transition, and also, as you mentioned, you can get at them. And I think Forest will be looking at, again, like we do almost most games, but looking at the wide areas, right? You know, if we have the pace of Anthony Elanga and Callum Hudson-Odoi, if you kind of have Chris Wood, as I knock my microphone over, have Chris Wood just kind of high or almost on that Liverpool defensive line, and then the 2 wide players alongside him, I think it can cause problems. It has caused problems in the past. That's one of Forest's strengths.
Yeah, you're talking about kind of I'm going to do it again. A cohesive unit pressing as one. I don't see that I haven't seen it yet this season. Again, I think certainly in the last match, I think we pressed high. I think there was lots and lots of energy. I just don't think that the thinking was joined up enough to disrupt a defence and a team as well coached as Liverpool. I mean, Arne Slot, it's kind of incredible, really. He hasn't skipped a beat. And arguably, the football they're playing right now is better than the football they were playing under Klopp. I mean, don't get me wrong, when they were fully bombastic and like going for it and, charge of the cavalry and all that, I mean, they were just undeniable, just magnificent. And we're seeing them be a bit more measured this season. But, I mean, they're fully in control of the games they've played so far. It is worrying. But to come back to your point, I think when you've got Morgan Gibbs-White, you've got Elliot Anderson, and potentially, probably, Sangare, I think you're right. I think we absolutely can go toe-to-toe with them in midfield. I just don't know that it's going to be enough. And also, I'd worry about Sangare as well. I mean, he has missed a yellow card, and I think he might be due a red. So I hope I'm not tempting fate there. But he is. He's a fraction of a second too late too often. Yeah. And he's walking that thin line right now, and hopefully he doesn't fall the wrong side of it this weekend.
Cool, Mark. You like some of these Forest fans on...
It was almost a full bottle of wine, Max. I mean...
mate, honestly, some of the negativity that have come out of the club...
it was red.
Yeah, but I'm actually one to criticise and scrutinise often. That's why I do a Forest podcast. Come on, but like some of the negativity this week about the club filling the corner in with these hospitality boxes. Yeah. And, they look awful. Come on, just think of the revenue it will bring the club in. Like, just lay off it a little bit. We're going to move ground one day. Just chill a little bit. And
the Forest porter cabin sponsored by Max Hayes.
Yeah, and can't
wait to see that signage on there. But no, I mean, you've got to be realistic. There are a few teams, and it is, it's interesting. So when you said earlier in the pod about talking, it was Steve, right?
Yeah, Steve.
Yeah, with the Liverpool podcast. And you talked about, Forest kind of establishing themselves, kind of mid-table, like not looking over their shoulder constantly. What are the metrics that enable you to determine that progress? Well, quite clearly, it's position in the league table. That's one, obviously. Secondly, it's, not hemorrhaging our best players every single transfer window. But I'd say another of those metrics, Max, is whittling away at the number of teams in the Premier League who you no longer fear. You're like, on any given day, we'll turn them over. Could we have said last season, we expect to turn over Villa? Probably not. Do we expect to turn over Tottenham? Probably not. Chelsea? Probably not, right? Like, could we get a result on the day? Absolutely capable of it. But did we really expect it? And we're now starting to whittle away at these teams. So when you ask those questions about those teams, now I'm like, why not? Look at the talent. Where are we weak? Where's our starting 11 weak? Like, it isn't. If everyone's fit and ready to go, I'm going toe-to-toe with Tottenham. I'm confident about taking on Villa. I can't say the same about Man City, Arsenal, and Liverpool.
Yeah, I get that. Yet. There you go. Well said. Mark, just quickly then, score prediction. Dread to ask, mate. Dread to ask.
All right. Well, just because it's you and I can't break your little heart, I had 3-1 bouncing around in my mind. But during this pod, you kind of brought me around and I'm thinking it's a 1-goal game. So I will go over the 2-1. No, you know what? Let's have fun with it. Max is going to Anfield. Let's give him something to. Let's give him an exhibition. I'm going to go Liverpool 3-2.
Okay, I'm going to go Forest 1, Liverpool 1. I think it'll be a draw. I think
After
Forest...
all of that, all the yapping, like a little dog over in the corner. Come on, come out swinging.
Neutral presenting.
Courage of your convictions. Good.
All right, well, mate. All right, 1-1 up until. I'm telling you now. Clip this. Right, 1-1. I've honestly had a dream. 1-1 until the 83rd minute. Jota Silva is going to come on for Forest, and out of nowhere, going to just unleash one. It's going to go top bins. 2-1 last minute.
Love to see that. Firstly, he's a bloke that has that in him. Obviously, we've seen it. Secondly, top celebrator. Like, can't stand these players who just don't know how to celebrate. He's got it down. And thirdly, can you imagine? That would be alongside the Arsenal game.
Revenge, actually, after their... Yeah.
Alongside the Arsenal game 2 seasons ago, and maybe the Newcastle game where Chris Wood temporarily became Messi, that would be one of the iconic games of Forest's modern history. To take Liverpool down at Anfield and Max Hayes to be there to see it in the flesh. Good grief. You know what? You're going to be flipping drinking if that happens. I want a pod within 20 minutes of the final whistle.
Might be a bit of a challenge being at the game with my 4G's terrible in Manchester. Never mind a football ground with 30,000-40,000 people in it. It's a good job Paul Tierney isn't reffing. I was just about to say that. Yeah. Still haven't forgiven that bloke. We've got Michael Oliver instead. Best of luck.
Wonderful.
Even better.
Yeah.
Right. That I think finishes us very nicely. Thanks to Steve as well for his thoughts. Mark, as ever, thank you, mate. We shall be back on Sunday for our main episode. I start uni on Monday, so it's all a bit all over the place. So I know, final year. See, this is the thing, Mark. We've almost switched roles, right? It's freshers this week at the minute in the UK for all the university students. I went and ran 10K this morning because if you didn't know, I'm running a half marathon. It's not that I don't go on about it enough. I've got my first 6-a-side game back tonight. I'm keeping fit, quite healthy. Not even had a drink today, whereas, you've obviously been out with the students in America.
Well, if listeners and viewers wondering why I was drinking last night, I have a mate here from England. Very quick story. He and I have been friends for a very long time. And it's always a joy when he comes over to see me. So he was sat up like last night drinking. But the funny thing about him, his name's Trev. I'll give him a name check because he does listen to the pod. So he'll be excited. And we have a bit of a side bet going on with regards to Liverpool as well, which I'm not going to reveal right now, Max. But the next time I'm on the pod, if Forest win, it could be a little embarrassing for me. But anyway, Trev, always been a football fan, never had a team. And I used to live in Nottingham, obviously. So he lives in Oxford. And I dragged him up to the City Ground for his first live match. And he summarily became a Red. So, and of course, I've seen very little in the way of joy subsequently. I mean, this is going back 23, 24 years. So right after we got relegated. But he was there with me at Wembley. Trev and I shared that experience together. And he's probably died in the wall now. So thanks for listening, Trev. Appreciate you coming on the journey with me. Regardless of how painful it's been most of the way. Good times now, though. Nothing but good times.
Yeah. Thanks, Trev. Not only for listening to the Garibaldi Red podcast, but for also being a friend to Mark. It is a tough gig. Right, that finishes us nicely. Give us a like, share and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us across Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Leave us a review if you did enjoy. I'm telling you, Jota Silva last minute. Tomorrow, my youthful optimism is there. Come on, you Reds.